Good morning, everyone, and you're all very welcome to our weekly preview for the week ahead. Now, of course, yesterday being the bank holiday in the UK, we have decided to run the preview today. Now, again, I suppose we alluded to it last Friday in our recap. We have a very, very, very busy week ahead this week. We had the RBA very, very early this morning coming out with their latest interest rate decision, which in turn proved to be a 0.25% hike. We had seen a lot of volatility in the Aussie pairs. We had upside and downside, particularly in the likes of Euro Aussie, Pound Aussie, and Aussie dollar as well. There was quite a significant bit of volatility taking place during the Asian session overnight. Now, of course, broadly speaking, as we look to the week ahead, we do have a very, very busy bumper Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We have got Lagarde speaking today. We've got a range of data out again this evening between the Aussie and the Kiwi. We do also have some data out in the US as well, with US factory orders taking place today as well. Overall, the unemployment rate came out this morning as well in Europe and proved to be slightly higher, which means it's obviously there's a little bit of a reinforcement there. We had it in Germany as well, which came in on expectation as well. I suppose the big talking points this week is Wednesday. Of course, the big elephant in the room in terms of trading this week. We have the next Federal Open Market Committee's interest rate decision. So the Fed is completing their interest rate decision and meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. So the consensus is for a 0.5% rate increase. Now, a lot of that has been priced into the markets in particular the last 2 weeks or so, which has seen a lot of downside pressures in the indices. Now, of course, traditionally, if you were to look at the last 2 or 3 interest rate decisions for the Fed, we've seen a little bit of selling coming into it, and we've seen Fed Chair Powell do what he normally does, stabilize the markets, and we actually have seen a bit of a rally into the close. So I suppose we just have to be conscious of previous events as well, being cognitive of current circumstances, and I suppose the figures that comes out in the policy statement. So all eyes would be on balance sheet, but also the interest rate decision. If it's a case that they come out and go with a 75 basis point increase, which we don't think it's going to happen, but again, we can't rule anything out. We'll obviously have to see the market recalibrate that, reprice that in to the fair pricings in the indices as well. So we have to take all that into consideration as well. Okay. Broadly speaking, across tomorrow, there is a raft of data right through the day, overnight. Again, with the Aussie, we have data tomorrow morning in Germany, Spain, Italy, and the Eurozone, broadly speaking, between kind of 7 and 9. And then we have more US data tomorrow before the open, with ISMs and global composites with global services in the S&P as well. So we have to factor that into consideration. Now, Thursday as well is going to be another busy day. Again, Aussie data overnight, but the big kind of discussion point on Thursday will be the Bank of England's policy. Okay, so the Bank of England is also expected to raise rates by 0.25%. In terms of their forward guidance, let's wait and see. Now, of course, for the previous, it's not just the interest. When it comes to the Bank of England, it's not just the interest rate decision that we're obviously looking at. We're also looking at the overall voting system. So last time out, we had eight voting for the hike, with 1 actually dissenting, which was Cunliffe. So of course we have to factor that into consideration. So let's say, for example, this time around, if this vote is maybe 6 or 6 and 3 or a 5 and 4, then the likelihood is that's going to be perceived to be a dovish increase in rates, which may actually be positive for the gilts and I suppose the FTSE as well. So we just have to factor in the voting systems as well, in terms of is it a hawkish or is it a dovish increase in interest rates. So we just have to factor into consideration. Again, along with that, we have got the policy summary, so we'll be paying particularly close attention to that, and of course Governor Bailey's speech as well at 11:30. So tomorrow, today, and Wednesday and Thursday are going to be 2 very, very important days for the markets. And of course, let's just not forget the Friday, which of course we will be having the NFP. So NFP, we will be doing kind of a deeper dive into the NFP on Friday, but of course NFP, as in terms of it normally does, is going to add to a little bit of volatility as well. Now, of course, when it comes to the NFP, the markets that are usually affected more, so you tend to see dollar yen being affected, you tend to see gold being more affected than the likes of the indices, broadly speaking. So just to know what contracts to trade as well is significantly important. Now, of course, Thursday and Friday, broadly speaking, we do have other data out. We've got our usual jobless claims on the weekly. We've got Japanese data, CPI data. So that'll be interesting to see again from the Bank of Japan's diverging monetary policy in comparison to the data of the ECB, the RBA, the Fed, the Bank of Canada. So we have to keep a close eye on that because that could see a little bit of underlying weakness again factor back into the yen, which has been heavily beaten over the last couple of months or so. And of course, Friday, we do have Canadian unemployment data as well. So it's going to be a very, very important, it's going to be a very, very busy week, broadly speaking. From the price action perspectives, you're going to see a lot of liquidity moves. You're going to see a lot of volatility and arbitrage, particularly from a news trading perspective as well. Okay, so let's have a quick dive into the price action on the charts. As we said, over the last number of days, the indices has sold off a little bit, and we have seen a little bit of recovery off of these near-term lows yesterday. But overnight, the Dow Jones is sitting kind of back underneath this 33,200 handle. Now, of course, if you were to look at kind of the 21st or 20th of April, the April highs from where we we're down a modest 2,000 points. So you also have to factor that into consideration. So from the monthly highs, we are approximately sitting down around 7%. So again, April has been a very, very bearish month, broadly speaking. Similarly, again, on the S&Ps, if we go up to the weekly or even the daily timeframes, we can see how the S&Ps has been completely hammered, but is sitting and is kind of concentrated at this key level around 41.50. All eyes to see how does the price action perform this week. We haven't technically, yes, on the shorter time frames, we have broken structure, we have cleared through, but on the weekly time frame, we could very easily see this being the low of the week, and we could potentially see a bounce, particularly if Powell does what he normally does and actually stabilizes the markets. So just factor that into contention as well. We are bringing it to your attention in advance, so you are prepared for the scenarios on the buy side as well as the sell side. Now, again, this area here at 41.50 is going to be a critical juncture for the indices this week in the kind of the broader consensus of the markets this week. And of course, not to kind of leave out the NASDAQ, if we go back up to the weekly on the NASDAQ, this area around 13,000, we have some kind of shorter term breaker structures, particularly on the 4 hour, but the price action at the moment is sitting firmly above this 13,000 handle as we trade into the Fed decision tomorrow. So again, I'll be watching this very, very closely. Could this potentially be the arch bottom? Could we see potential rally tomorrow? Yeah, absolutely. All comes down to balance sheet figures in terms of the runoff or quantitative tightening, or QT is the new term that's been quoted. And of course, forward guidance in terms of where are they perceiving rates to be, and how is the overall inflation aspect affecting or having a detrimental effect on the economy. So we also have to factor into consideration. So again, all eyes on the price action Wednesday and Thursday. Gold has seen has been hit quite significantly over the past few days, particularly if you look at the daily timeframes, we can see how it's pretty much been walloped back through the 1900 handle and back through this previous consolidation. Now, it was only kind of a couple of weeks ago when we're sitting up here to the 2000 level, and then arrows were for gold to potentially push higher. But since then, gold has taken a fairly significant wallop. And at this point in time, would it be surprising to see the price action break into this 1780, 1800 level? In my personal opinion, it won't. It's not that surprising at all. But I think nearer term this week was kind of this focal point, this area around 1850. If this 1850 level gives way, then you'll probably see that more elongated sell-off into those lows. Now, of course, fundamentals will have a bit of an impact on the markets this week, so you have to factor that into consideration as well. Last but not least is our DXY for today, just to cover everything off. And we are seeing how the price action is still maintaining this fulcrum point around this 103, 104 level. Last week, we had a weekly rejection off the 104 handle. We did close very strongly. We took out the pre-COVID highs in the weekly, but even on the monthly as well, if we look at kind of month end, we can see how we got a massively bullish closure on for the end of April. On Friday, and of course, all eyes to see how does the price action perform this week. Could we see the Fed have a dovish narrative for the price action to come back? Could well be a plausible possibility, but of course, the focal point from a price action perspective is on this 104 level. If this 104 handle gives way, more than likely you will see further risk of narratives being factored into the markets. So it's important to take that into consideration also as well. All right. Other than that, guys, I think that's pretty much it for the week. Wednesday, Thursday, we will be back on Friday to do another quick recap of the events this week, and also having a preview for NFP, a more deeper dive into the NFP on Friday as well. Until then, have a great week.